Hi everyone, welcome to the Navigant Credit Union Broadcast Center. I'm GoLocal News editor Kate Nagel. Thanks for joining us for the 4 o'clock show. And before I welcome my first guest in, the big news on GoLocal right now, the Citizens Bank downtown headquarters building is on the auction block. You can read all about it after the show. But first, I would like to welcome in my first guest, Tom Nimmo, one of the organizers with Neon Retro Fest taking place this weekend. Tom, thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
So Neon Retro Fest, the best of the culture from the late 70s kind of to the early 90s. Talk with us about this brainchild of having this con, if you will, dedicated, Stranger Things and Atari and sort of this love for the 80s and sort of how you cultivated what's going to be offered this weekend.
So I think we're definitely in a point of nostalgia right now for that late 20th century, the late 70s, 80s, early 90s, and Stranger Things is definitely a part of it, and Ready Player One is definitely a part of it. There's this whole genre of music that's emerging right now called synthwave or retrowave, depending on who you ask. And that's going to form kind of the kernel of our Retro Fest. We're going to have about 21 different acts.
So talk with us a little bit about what to expect. This is taking place at the Crown Plaza from Friday through Sunday this coming weekend. And we talked a little bit about our age cohort. There's certainly going to be a number of things that folks will recall or evoke. So what can folks expect this weekend?
Oh, there's so much. I've been working on an elevator pitch for this since I started, and I've been working on it for over a year, and I still don't have a 30-second pitch down. But what I can say is it's going to be arcade culture. We're going to have about 75 or more arcade and pinball machines, which are going to be all set up with a view to the main stage, so people can play those games while they watch the music. We're going to have speakers. We're going to have panels talking about things from that era. We're going to have games, not just arcade games, but board games, role-playing games, console games. I'm very excited about the console room.
The console room. So what can one expect for games in the console room?
We're going to have, I think, 40 to 50 setups.
Wow.
And the coolest part of it is going to be 4 recreations of either living rooms or bedrooms. So it's going to have all the kind of things that you would have expected to see in a living room that had an Atari or a bedroom that had a Super Nintendo.
So do you expect people are going to be blowing on the Atari cartridges, trying to get the dust out this weekend?
Hopefully we got all the dust out already. It's been a massive thing.
So what are you most looking forward to as one of the organizers of bringing all these folks together again to really celebrate this kind of retro 80s fabulous culture?
Oh, geez. I think the thing that I'm most looking forward to is what comes out of Neon Retro Fest, what comes out of getting all of these like-minded individuals together under the same roof for 3 days, and then, when the next one rolls around to see the fruits of that.
Now, will there be any musical component? We talk about this sort of synthwave movement that we see right now. Talk with us a little bit about the music.
Yeah, so there's a lot of it. There's a lot of music. We've got about, I think, 8 acts a day. So the music is going to start around 5 or 6 o'clock on Friday and Saturday, and a little bit earlier on Sunday because we have an earlier end time on Sunday, because the part I'm most not looking forward to is cleaning it all up.
Once you've celebrated and had the party. So talk with us a little bit, Tom, about nuts and bolts. If folks are interested in going, sort of approaches, tickets, things of that nature.
So at this point, our pre-registration is closed. It's all going to be, tickets at the door. You can get a ticket for, I guess you could still do will call, but tickets for the full weekend are $85, and then if you want to do individual days, it's between $30 and $40 depending on the day. Saturday being the more expensive and Sunday being the less expensive.
So do you get a sense from folks, I'm sure you're talking with people in the community getting excited for this weekend, that they're really looking to make a weekend out of this?
Yeah, the response has been huge. The people that really get it, they're interacting with everything we put on Facebook. They're liking it, they're commenting on it, they're sharing it. It's been really amazing because like I said, over a year ago when I was first brought on, I was just doing the social media, and we had, I think, 200 people. And now we have almost 2,000 people, and we can't post a meme without it getting 50 notifications on our cell phones.
So do you expect this to be, an all ages event? Because let's face it, the sort of nostalgia for that time frame is certainly sort of folks of our generation sort of hearkening back to that youth, maybe a simpler time, if you will. But I have to imagine even the younger generation who didn't experience it, like it's very unique for them and something that they're embracing as well.
Yeah, I forget where I was, but I saw there was a young lady and she was wearing a t-shirt that said, "I only care about like 3 people and Stranger Things." So obviously that's finding some purchase everywhere.
And what do you think the popularity is? Is Stranger Things just one of those shows and phenomenons that just have brought together just like, it's like the perfect fit of, again, the little bit of sci-fi, the sort of 80s nostalgia, and really good writing and acting?
There's certainly something special about it, and the music, the music of Stranger Things is, when I'm trying to describe synthwave or retrowave to somebody and they've never heard of it, I say, "Well, have you heard the Stranger Things soundtrack?" And they say, "Yes." I'm like, "All right, well, perfect. That's a great place to start."
If you're thinking of what synthwave is. And let's talk a little bit about the video games, because we know that video game and gaming culture has just become so advanced. I mean, the realisticness of playing games today. What do you think holds the appeal of playing, again, those really simple games that still endures?
Well, there was certainly a higher skill level involved in some of those games. There are some that are just like maddeningly frustrating, and you have to, a game that got really popular recently is Cuphead, and that's one that is actually has a lot of the sensibilities of the old games, being extremely hard, primary among them.
So do you think that's how video games have come a little, depending on what they are, a little too easy for folks? Was that sort of the fun in the 80s, just, thinking back to Super Mario Brothers 3 and how hard it was to get to those final levels?
So I don't think that there's anything wrong with video games now. I think that generally they have a little bit more of a narrative, interactive experience, whereas the older games, you definitely had to kind of squint your eyes to get like, oh, what is that? That block is a person with a sword, apparently? Okay, sure.
I definitely took the Duck Hunt gun like right up to the TV. I was not even 5 feet away. Okay, I will totally tell you that's what I did.
That dog got to you, huh?
Well, you have a power pad?
Oh, that I'm not as involved in. So like, we have departments, of course. With anything of this scale, you kind of have to do it that way. I don't know if we have a power pad.
You just will have to see if you go to Neon Retrofest this coming up weekend. And as I'm standing here and I'm talking to you, I know the camera can't quite see the kicks. Do you anticipate like any sort of con that people are really going to turn out kitted out in their best retro attire?
So one of the things we've done to get ready for the Neon Retrofest is we had 11 different events at Free Play Bar and Arcade downtown. And we found that people were dressing up almost every single time we would do either a synthwave night, we did some DJ nights, we did live synthwave night, and we also did a couple of like flea market type events. And people were dressing up for all of them.
And so if you're embracing it, where are you shopping around? Are you doing some stuff online? Are you in thrift shops? Where are you finding your best retro attire?
For retro attire, there's actually some great stuff just in Providence. The Arcade has a couple of great shops. There's several good thrift shops in Providence. And we're going to see some of that stuff also for sale at the Retrofest.
And so folks, maybe if they can or can't make it that sort of first day, if you will you be posting a lot on social media so folks can kind of live vicariously if they're maybe at the beach one day and thinking of going the next day to really check out what it looks like?
Yeah, we're going to have a very heavy media. We have a whole media department, and they're going to be just going around constantly taking pictures, posting to social media. We're going to be recording a lot of stuff, going live a lot. It's, certainly it's retro in the way it feels, but it's going to be very modern in the way it's put together.
And so it's in Rhode Island. It's Friday through Sunday at the Crown Plaza in Warwick. Have you attended other ones around the country? You really are the cutting edge in putting this type of event together.
There just aren't very many of them in this country. There are a couple of events like this in Europe, and also South America seems to kind of be ahead of the curve a little bit. But we're really unique in how we're putting this together. It's very immersive. It's about the experience and interacting with the stuff more so than just waiting in line for an autograph.
So
nothing wrong with that, by the way.
Nothing wrong with that. There's been an emergence of various different cons. I mean, do you anticipate this moving forward as people with their niche and really want to delve into it? Do you anticipate maybe Neo Retrofest becoming an annual event?
We're hoping that it does. We're hoping that it becomes an annual event, and that we all get fabulously wealthy off of it.
Neon Retrofest is taking place this weekend at the Crown Plaza in Warwick. We'll provide links to it. As Tom said, the pre-registration is closed, but tickets are available both for the weekend and for the days. And again, if you've got interest in late 70s, 80s, early 90s, anything neon, it'll be taking place in Warwick this weekend at the Neon Retrofest. Tom, thank you so much for taking the time to come into the studio. Don't go anywhere. We're going to stay local here at the Navigant Credit Union Broadcast Center. Hi everyone, welcome back to the Navigant Credit Union Broadcast Center. I'm GoLocal News editor Kate Nagel. I'd like to welcome in my next guest, Adam Eckelman with Libraries Without Borders, working closely with the Providence Community Library. Thank you for joining us today. I appreciate your coming in.
Thank you so much for having me.
Well, I appreciate it because this is a national movement that's taking place here in Rhode Island and across the country, basically bringing libraries resources right to the people, whether it's to flea markets, whether it's to bus stations, community centers, really closely working here in Providence and Olneyville. But I want to talk with you about the Libraries Without Borders concept nationally and how it's being implemented around the country.
Yeah, so we are a 501c3 nonprofit, and we're based in DC, so we're not actually local, even though we're here on GoLocal. But for us, the biggest question is always, how do we reach people where they are in the spaces where people are already hanging out with the information that's most relevant to their needs? And so that means, as you said, going to the laundromat, going to the public park, going to, there's so many of these informal spaces where people are gathering that libraries, the physical space might not be, but it's still a way of reaching families. In particular for us, our mission is to reach low-income families. So sometimes we have to be a little creative about thinking, okay, what's a space where people are waiting, but where they might have a little bit of time to learn or engage, and that might be the waiting room of a hospital, that might be like a social service center where they're giving out things like SNAP or TANF benefits, and so on.
So talk with us a little bit about how you approach it at that national level, and of course, tailor it to very local. That's what we're going to get down to where it's been here in Rhode Island, because the program's been running this summer and does have several more weeks as well. And from a programmatic standpoint, getting, as you said, reaching folks sort of where they are and doing what they need to do on a day-to-day basis. But from a resource perspective, talk with us about what you envisioned and what's been happening around the country in terms of being able to bring library-based resources and what that means for families around the country.
Well, for us, it often starts with a small business. So for a good example, a big program that we have across the country is something called the Wash and Learn Initiative, which is all about turning laundromats into branches of the local library. And when you're thinking about that, you're like, why laundromats? And it's a good question, like what makes a laundromat so interesting? But for us, well, first of all, you're stuck there.
You got some time.
You got some time. You got about 90 minutes. Your clothes have to wash. They have to dry.
Full cycle, yeah, 90.
Full cycle. They're open about 24/7. So even if the library closes, well, you can still go to the laundromat. And then other thing that's so interesting is people generally return every week. So there are so many families that don't have the transportation to go to the library. They might be working a job where their shifts are changing week to week. So it's a little erratic to know, okay, am I going to be able to finish my English language course at the library? Or am I going to be able to finish my computer course? But you're going to the laundromat every week because you kind of have to.
Everyone's got to do laundry.
And so it's an opportunity for us to redesign content and redesign the way that we learn around the needs, not around the structures, the institutions we have, but around what people's schedules are. So to answer your question, with the Wash and Learn initiative, we said, okay, if laundromats are the space, what's the business? And we started working with this national association called the Coin Laundry Association to identify laundromat owners across the country and say, hey, this is definitely good for the community, but this also might be pretty good for business, because if your laundromat has a librarian coming in, it has books, it has resources and games, maybe people are more likely to go to that laundromat than to go to the one across the street.
Then all of a sudden it's the fun laundromat.
Exactly. It's a little capitalist, but hey.
But it's, again, thinking outside the box, thinking outside the borders, if you will.
Quite literally.
And you came into Providence, obviously, to check out what's been taking place here. So tell us about your tour here, being in the city, what you've seen the Providence Community Library being engaging with the Libraries Without Borders.
The Providence Community Library has been the most amazing partner for us. And actually, through them, we started to work with the Providence Public Library and Dorcas International, the Center for the Book, and Books Our Wing. So this whole coalition of different nonprofits. But for us, it's all focused in Olneyville. So we had the same question. How do we take the resources that exist at the Olneyville Library and bring them out into the community? What's the right laundromat? What's the right bus station? What's the right space where people are? But the library hasn't gone yet. So we started this pilot program, and it's small. We've been working now for about 4 weeks, 5 weeks. And we have one library staff member who is really just floating around the community. So we've been at a low-income housing lobby in the Manton Heights units with the help of the Providence Housing Authority. We've been working at a laundromat as well, at a bus station, and one space, or two spaces that we actually just kind of came up with were the flea market on Manton Ave, and there's a liquor store as well right near the Manton Heights housing units. So we started bringing a librarian there as well, because we figured, hey, if that's where people are, let's try it out.
So you talk about this being the pilot program both here in Olneyville and taking place around the country. Is there potential to reach out into additional communities as well?
Yeah, so for Olneyville, we found 2 spaces were really, really successful. The first was the laundromat. Again, for all those reasons I said. People are waiting, people are coming back every week, and it's open often. One great thing about the laundromat we're working at in Olneyville is that it also has air conditioning.
Ooh.
So in the summer, you can't beat it. Another space that we've really enjoyed working in is the flea market. It's got a big crowd, and some days, some Saturdays, it's been a little hot, but what's nice about it is that when our library staff member is talking to people, a crowd starts to gather. When we start talking about the resources that are at the library or the resources at Dorcas and how to access them. A big question for us has always been not just what's available, but how do you access it? So how do you go online and find these resources? What's the way to get to the library? What's the way to get to Dorcas? And as we think about outside of Olneyville, there's a lot of need. And there's a lot of these spaces throughout the city. Providence is an awesome city. And I've loved working here. And in every neighborhood, we have to think locally. We have to think, what is the right space? Maybe it's not the laundromat. Maybe it's the bus station. Maybe it's a street corner. But there's a way that we can bring the library outside of its walls and make it more accessible to families.
And let's talk a little bit about the library offerings, if we will. People think libraries, people think books, but there's so much more than that. So let's talk a little bit about here in Providence, especially what people want.
Yeah.
They, obviously want to read books, but you want classes, services, resources available. What do you think that folks in it's I'm sure a very diverse array of facets that folks want to see happening at their community library?
We see so much, and one thing that's really important is that every library branch, especially with the Providence Community Libraries, has a slightly different set of services because the community is a little different. So in Olneyville, it's a predominantly Spanish-speaking neighborhood, though it's very diverse. So Olneyville has English language learning classes. And then right down the street in the South Providence branch, there are computer classes. And that's something we're noticing more and more, is a need to use for basic digital literacy skills, how to use a computer, because so much information is online. But at the same time, of course, there's still books. There's still book clubs. And I mean, I always like to talk about the number of hardcover books, of like paper books, is actually going up. I know, but it's true. So people are still reading, children are still reading, and there's so many different ways of helping people access information. And that ultimately is our mission at Libraries Without Borders, but it's also the mission of a library, to make information free and accessible to everybody.
Well, this program has been going on throughout the summer. We'll continue for a few more weeks. We'll provide those dates if folks are interested to see in the Olneyville neighborhood where these resources are available across the area. But Adam, I appreciate your taking the time to come in and give folks an overview of both at the national level how Libraries Without Borders has approached bringing community libraries right to the people. I expect we'll probably be hearing from you throughout the year as to what's next for Libraries Without Borders.
I hope so. I hope so. We love working in Olneyville, but as I was saying, there's a lot of need, and I think there's a lot of creativity happening in the city where we can start to brainstorm together what's the issue that we need to be tackling, whether that's legal concerns, whether that's early childhood education or health, and what's the space. Sometimes that's the library, and sometimes it's not. And I think one thing that's so amazing about the city is there's the potential to say, let's drop everything and try something new. And we've loved that about working here, and that's what we do, and that's what the Providence Community Library has been doing.
Well, appreciate your taking the time to come stop here and go local as you're making your way, I'm sure, around the country, catching out all the programs of Libraries Without Borders. Adam Eckelman, I appreciate your taking the time to come in here.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Don't go anywhere. We're going to be right back with our next guest here at the Navigant Credit Union Broadcast Center.
Hey, how are you? Fantastic. Excellent. I am? No, you look fantastic. Okay.
everyone. Welcome back to the Navigant Credit Union Broadcast Center. I'm GoLocal News editor Kate Nagel. Thanks for watching the 4 o'clock show. We stayed local. Now we're going to get a lot more national. I'd like to welcome Matt Matarazzo with Gladiator Solutions to talk about Pack Protect. Matt, thanks for joining us today.
Hi, Kate. That's a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Well, as we are looking at the end of summer, heading back to school, thought there was no better time than to welcome you in to talk about what it is that you're doing from a business standpoint to help families and students address safety concerns. Clearly, school shootings have occurred with increasing numbers around the country, and you've been involved with looking for ways to keep kids safe. And this is really looking with Pack Protect, the level 3 protection. Talk with us a little bit about this brainchild and how this all came to fruition.
Sure. So I happen to own a ballistic protection company called Gladiator Solutions, and I work with law enforcement, military personnel, first responder community every day in providing them with life-saving products. And about 3 years ago, I thought about putting something in my kids' backpacks. I have a 14-year-old daughter, Lexi, and my 16-year-old son, Sebastian. They both go to the local high school. And with the frequency of shootings across the country, as a parent, I'm concerned. But I never got to the point where I did anything because even though it's what I do for a living, dealing with the professionals that actually face those types of dangers willingly every day, it was emotionally, it was challenging for me. But it wasn't until the Parkland shooting that I finally put plates in my kids' backpacks. My son took it out at class one day, and some of his classmates said, wow, why don't we have something like that? And that weekend, they approached me and asked if I could produce something for them. So essentially what I did was I said, okay, well, if I'm going to do this, it's going to be with you guys alongside of me. So this really is a product by kids for kids. And essentially what came out of our initial discussions were that, you know, there's the national policy, Run, Hide, Defend, and it's wonderful, right? The first responder community has done a tremendous amount of work in preparing the kids and the schools for this type of an event. But the bottom line is, from the moment that a shooter starts shooting and the moment that the first responders get on scene, there is nothing to protect the kids, no matter how well they implement Run, Hide, and Defend.
So talk with us a little bit about Pack Protect. You talk about your kids taking it out of the backpack and showing their other students. And there's a number of products on the market, but yours is differentiated in a particular way, and tell viewers how.
Sure. So we use the same exact technology and materials that we use with law enforcement and first responders across the country. Our product is the latest, greatest materials, ultra-high molecular weight polyethylene. It is lighter. It is 15 times stronger than steel per weight. And what our product does is it actually absorbs the round. So when the plate is hit with a round, the kinetic energy is dispersed evenly so that there's less trauma to the point of impact, and particularly in the back of the plate, which is, in most cases, against the victim. We call it RDT, round dispersion technology. A lot of the products that are out there are either bulletproof backpacks that are not very appealing to the students. They all want their JanSport or their North Face or their Patagonia, right? It's their specific identity. And other inserts are older type of material like aramids, which are heavier and they give more. So the impact is there's more trauma to the victim. The bottom line is, when we developed this, we wanted a product that was unobtrusive. We wanted it light. We wanted it very thin. You can see it's 1/4 of an inch thick. But we wanted it to be something that you put in the back of the backpack and you don't think about it, right? I mean, the bottom line is, this is designed to provide peace of mind for not just the students or the business person that has it in their business backpack, but also to the parents. And when I finally put a plate in my kids' backpacks, the peace of mind that came over me was, it was somewhat overwhelming. But, you know, what I did was I felt like I was doing something to give my kids a better chance of survival in the event of an incident like this.
And talk with us, you know, as you said, you tried it out on your kids and sent them to school with it. How do your kids feel about this, going to school, knowing that they have this protection, both in their backpack, but still that level of uncertainty of any kid anywhere around the country, you know, doesn't know if their school could be next. How are your kids handling all of this?
It's a great question, right? I think what came out loud and clear with the kids was that the adults, the politicians, have been dealing with this issue for years. But the reality is it's the students that are actually injected into the environment every single day, right? We drop our kids off at 7:30, 8 o'clock, 8:30, and they're there for 7 hours. And what came out, again, loud and clear from the students was they think about it. You know, not all the time, right? But they think about it every once in a while. Is somebody going to jump out of the corridor? Is somebody going to walk into their gym class or their art class and do something, you know, that's just absolutely terrifying? So, you know, for them, it was more, again, tied to the policy of run, hide, defend. What could give them a better fighting chance when they're running away and they've got their backpacks on them, when they're hiding in a classroom, using it as a shield, putting it in front of them, or at the very, you know, I think unfortunate instance where you have to defend, you have to fight, you're in a confined environment with a shooter, you go at them with this above your head and you try to create as much havoc and distraction as you possibly can while you and your classmates or teachers disarm the shooter. So, you know, those are the things that came out loud and clear, but they do think about it. The other thing that came out loud and clear was that the kids said, we absolutely want to do something to address the mental health side of this issue. And that's why, you know, we have partnered with Core Foundation. And Core Foundation was formed by students of Virginia Tech. I think everybody's well aware of the shooting that took place at that institution. A bunch of these folks that are PhDs, and they are very well educated and schooled in the area of mental health, have formed this organization. It's a nonprofit. They go across the country to high schools, middle schools, and they foster this more welcoming, more friendly environment. What the kids said to us was, everybody knows those students that are sitting alone at lunch. Everyone knows the kids that are walking around campus with their head down and with this dark cloud hanging over them. And, you know, they said, look, there's Johnny, captain of the football team. He's with his girlfriend, Sally, head of the cheerleading squad. They look like they've got it all together, but you know what? They're just as confused as we are. So come on over here, be part of our group. Let's have a conversation and let's just figure this out. If one student can be steered away from doing something that's, you know, just, you know, terrifying, then this is a huge win for all of us across the country.
And so you raised that great point of approaching it from a multifaceted perspective, Matt. I want to just ask you from the business side of things, now that these have gone to manufacture, how's the interest and how have the sales been?
You know, so sales have been very, very, very strong, actually better than we had anticipated. And quite frankly, it's because it's a touchy subject. It's one of the reasons why I didn't come out with it 3 years ago. It's how do you talk to parents about this? But what was amazing was conceptually, when we first started on this journey in developing Pack Protect, we would talk to people, not just in our local community, but across the country. And overwhelmingly, the response was, why wouldn't we do this? So, you know, the reaction has been unbelievable. And again, it's not that people feel this is going to happen in my school. But the reality is, every single person that's been involved in a school shooting thought that before it happened. So this is really about protection in kind of preparing for the worst and hoping for the best. But it's also about prevention. And so you've got Pack Protect for protection, and you've got Core Foundation and the good work that they're doing across the country for prevention.
Well, I appreciate your taking the time to Skype in here, Matt, and give folks a perspective on Pack Protect, because as we learned from you earlier, how it differentiates from other products on the market, but what we didn't know is how you're working hand in hand with the mental health side of things to address this at the school level. We really appreciate your taking the time to Skype in today, Matt.
I appreciate you having me on your show.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Matt Matarazzo with Gladiator Solutions and his Pack Protect product. I want to thank them for coming here into the studio. Don't go anywhere. I'll be right back here in the Navigant Credit Union Broadcast Center. Hi everyone, welcome back to the Navigant Credit Union Broadcast Center. I'm GoLocal News editor Kate Nagel. Thanks for joining us for the 4 o'clock show. It's been busy since 3 with Rachel Noons, and it's been a busy 4 program, but I'd like to welcome my last and final guest, Justin Peralt with Peace and Providence Community Outreach. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
It's a great day to have you on because I'm catching you just ahead of the official opening of some new outreach services. So let's just start with talking about Peace and Providence Community Outreach.
So Peace and Providence is a local 501c3 nonprofit, and tomorrow we're having our official ribbon cutting of our outreach center in Warwick, located at 2107 Warwick Avenue. It's going to offer resources to the people of not only Warwick but all of Rhode Island.
So talk with us. You talk about it being a 501c3. We know these things don't happen overnight. Give us the backstory, why this was formed, what you saw as the need in the community, and how you were looking to address it.
So Peace and Providence started 8 years ago. I was at a church, North Providence Assembly of God, and I just seen a need to help people, and that's why we started the organization. And it's grown from doing one event a year at the Kennedy Plaza to what's going to happen tomorrow.
And so what can folks expect for resources? I've seen some pictures, I've seen some teasers online. Again, for this community outreach, this resource for individuals if they want to come and take part. Tell viewers a little bit about what they can expect.
So the Outreach Center is open for everybody, no matter your income, your status, no matter where you live in Rhode Island or Massachusetts. We have a salon that's going to offer free haircuts for everybody in the community. It also offers perms and colors for a reduced rate. We have a general store. It's an empowerment center. We've partnered with a local organization, We Share Hope, to help stock our general store, and people can come in no matter their income. They can do a shopping, and it's all for a donation.
Okay.
And it's important that people understand that it's no matter your income, we all have a budget, and by coming and supporting us, you're helping the people that may not have it.
And so opening the center in Warwick, and maybe people watching and listening right now thinking of, what a great concept, being able to help individuals, just the daily necessities, as you said, shopping, getting a haircut. How can folks help? What do you usually make an appeal to folks in the community if they're listening to the program and saying, well, that seems like it's doing a great service for Rhode Island?
Well, first and foremost is financial. As a nonprofit, we raise our own funds. So people can visit our website, peaceandprovidence.com, to give. They can partner with us for $20 a year. That helps keep the doors open. Or they can volunteer. Come on down, check. Say hi to us. Sign up to be a volunteer for one of our programs.
So talk a little bit about the programs. You mentioned how it started as once a year in Kennedy Plaza. Clearly, you had a vision as to having sort of that permanent space. Talk with us about how it's grown and the offerings at the center.
So, like I said, it started off as once a year, and there's such a need, not only in Providence or Warwick, but all around. People have a budget, and people live within their means. And what got me thinking about 3-4 years ago was I was talking to an elderly woman who needed help with food, and she said that there's months that she has to choose between food and paying for her medication. And we live in the greatest country in the world, and that shouldn't be. So Peace and Providence started taking on providing food at different food pantries and stuff like that. We currently, besides what's going on in Warwick, we currently provide 2,000 meals per month to veterans through our partnership with the VA, and through also through the Providence Housing at Parenti Villa and other housing complexes throughout Rhode Island.
So opening tomorrow in Warwick, and as you said, this has been 8 years now in the making. I don't want to say what's next because you're focusing on tomorrow, but other areas of Rhode Island, other programs. What's your thoughts about next steps?
Well, even though we are opening tomorrow, I am thinking ahead. My next vision for the organization is to actually possibly buy a restaurant and hire people that need jobs and use that money to put back into the community. And I want to say too that the organization is run by volunteers. Myself, my board, we're 100% volunteers. And also the next step is I would really like to buy a house, multifamily house, and have it called Liberty's House after my daughter, and have it be a program for families. So when families become desperate, instead of going to a shelter or on the streets, come into Liberty's House, and work the program with us and get back on your feet.
Well, it sounds like we've got some opportunities, hopefully, in the near future then to have you back in, talk about ways to grow Peace and Providence community outreach. Why the Peace and Providence? Tell us about coming up with the name.
Well, Providence in our name is actually, it's divine appointment. And so that's where the Providence came from. As a faith-based organization, we didn't want it to be, too churchy, I guess you can say. But Providence, is a divine appointment, also our capital city.
Oh, the double entendre there with Providence, with the Peace and Providence Community Outreach. Again, opening up in Warwick, and tell us the address again.
It's 2107 Warwick Avenue, and Sunday is our grand opening for the public. Tomorrow's our ribbon cutting. So if you're available Sunday, come on down from 1 to 4 and say hi.
Well, we'll provide plenty of links, so if you're looking to find out more information, volunteer opportunities, and ways to be able to support the program, but wanted you to have the opportunity to come in here and tell folks what you're up to in Warwick. So Justin, thank you for taking the time to come in.
Thank you for having me.
Don't go anywhere. We'll be back to wrap up here at the Navigant Credit Union Broadcast Center in just 1 minute. Hi everyone, welcome back to the Navigant Credit Union Broadcast Center. I'm GoLocal News editor Kate Nagel. Thanks for joining us for the 4 o'clock show. It was a full one. Going national, coming local here, we talked with Adam Eckelman with Libraries Without Borders, working with the Providence Community Library, specifically in Olneyville, to bring library services right to the people. This weekend coming up, there is going to be a Neon Retrofest. Tom Nimmo with the event taking place from Friday to Sunday in Warwick talked about the best of the late 70s through the early 90s, video games, music, speakers, and more, really taking the concept, narrowing it down to folks who like everything from Stranger Things to Atari and more. We'll provide those links if you're watching and looking online afterwards. Matt Matazzaro with Gladiator Solutions, a national company based on protective wear for professionals, talked about how with his kids in school developed a Pack Protect. This is an insert to place into backpacks in light of school shootings taking place around the country. Spoke with how he came up with the concept, how it's different than other bulletproof backpacks, and how he works in conjunction also with a mental health organization to address the issue overall. Finally, Justin Peralt with Peace in Providence Community Outreach. They are opening a new resource center in Warwick tomorrow. Came in to tell us a little bit more about the nonprofit, what they're looking to do in Warwick, and moving forward. I anticipate we'll have Justin back in. Well, be sure to tune into GoLocalProv.com and keep checking in on Facebook. We'll be back in studio tomorrow. Laura Alfonso will be on at 3 for her food show. I'll be back here at 4. We appreciate your watching. We appreciate your feedback. I'm GoLocal News editor Kate Nagel.